Malcolm Louie here. Welcome to Eversprint.com. Today we're speaking with Mark Fleming Jr., the founder and president of Signature Closers, a fast-growing company that provides signing support for title companies and lenders via their network of notary signing agents and attorneys. We'll be discussing how he grew his company's revenue from $3.8 million in 2014 to $6.3 million in 2017, an 80% increase, and how they are on track to hit $6 million again this year as well. Welcome to the call, Mark.
Thank you for having me, Malcolm. Glad to be here.
So Mark, how did you do it? How did you grow your company's sales so fast from 2014 to 2017?
Well, it was a little bit of a combination of things. Obviously, we're in a business where interest rates and the environment of the economy in general drive a lot of what we do. And we were fortunate to be in a climate where interest rates were incredibly low. So that, obviously historically low, and that really drove our refinance business. So we did quite a few refinance closings during that time period, which obviously drove revenue. We also have partnered since 2012 with a company called Adaptive, and they have a platform called Resware that we've really deeply integrated our technology with, and that's created opportunities for us where maybe other companies from a technological standpoint aren't in a position to take advantage of some of the things that we're doing. We've been able to do that. And we've also been fortunate in that a lot of the larger national companies that use Resware have partnered with us. And so we've been in a good place as far as the partnerships we've had, and we've tried to stay innovative and creative in regards to our technology. And then beyond that, we've hired quite a few people between 2014 and 2016 and even today. And we've been, I think, fortunate and have done a good job as a company of finding good people, because our mantra is people, process, and technology in that order. And so we feel that providing the technology to support, really efficient processes and good people is the best way to do it. And we've been lucky to be able to do that the last few years.
Fantastic. Would you say your sales growth was driven primarily from acquiring new customers, or are you getting a very large chunk of your sales increase from repeat business?
You know what? That's a good question. It's a combination of both. We've been in a position to acquire and grow our business as far as our customer base pretty substantially, I would say, over the last few years. But we've also seen that some of the relationships that we've started with, we maybe had a pilot opportunity. So one of our biggest clients today, we had an opportunity to begin as sort of a secondary vendor, and we partnered with them, and we were receiving maybe a smaller volume of work. They liked our partnership. They liked the things that we were doing. And at some point, we were kind of transitioned into that primary vendor role instead of the secondary vendor, and grew business that way as well. So it's a little bit of a combination. And obviously, I think a big part of our growth kind of ties back to client retention as well. And I'm proud to say we have over a 99% client retention rate year over year. We very rarely lose clients. We're certainly not perfect, but we try to do things the right way. And I think that contributes a lot in maintaining some stable revenue to build on.
Right. So if you had to estimate how much of your revenue growth came from new customers, new clients, as opposed to repeat business?
I would say, that's a good question. I would say over the course of the last 3 years, it's probably been about 50-50 would be the best description or best guess I could give. So I'll say 50-50 maybe, about 50% new business, 50% from maintaining and growing relationships that we have today.
Okay, great. Can you share how you go about acquiring new clients?
Absolutely. So our process is a little bit unique in the sense that from a sales perspective, I've worked in a few different industries, and I've been in sales, I've been in account management, and prior to this business, I was working within the employee benefit world. We worked with a lot of employers to help manage medical, dental, vision, wellness plans, so I was involved in that space. And in that world, there was definitely a much bigger market to kind of pull from as far as opportunities. I mean, any company really that offered any type of benefit plans in the state of Ohio was potentially, a target or a prospect for us in that business. What's unique about Signature Closers specifically is that there are definitely a large number of title companies, which would be our primary clients across the country. But what we're finding is that in order to really make opportunities for us that are worth investing in from a sales process, we need to find people that generally have high volume. We're a very low margin company. We're not in a position where we're paid, thousands of dollars on a closing transaction. And so our opportunities really come from some of those companies that provide, high volume. And so one of the challenges, I think, from a sales perspective for us is not necessarily finding those companies, but there aren't a ton of them across the country. And so I think our sales process in this business is a little bit more hands-on in the sense that, generally speaking, I think we know the companies that we really want to partner with. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a longer cycle to get the opportunity.
Okay.
And that's also why it's so important that you have a process in place to keep those companies. And so, we definitely do some cold calling. We do some email marketing as well. But oftentimes, a lot of it is really relationship driven. We participate in a couple of different conferences throughout the year and trade shows. And so that face-to-face time is really valuable. And really it's just building that relationship and building trust in what we do because, what we offer is such an integral part of the transaction. I mean, oftentimes the notary that we send or the signing agent that we send to the closing is the only person that the signer may ever see. And so, they need to have trust in the people they're doing business with. And so that drives our sales process and, really drives our business ultimately.
Right. If you could only choose one way of beginning a relationship, of initiating the contact that leads to the opportunity to build the relationship, what would be that method? What would be that channel?
Without a doubt, a referral from another existing client.
Okay.
And I think that's easy to say, but I think there's definitely a process for kind of growing that relationship. It's one thing to have a warm lead or a referral. One of our largest clients today was a referral from one of our other large clients. And so, that's obviously a great opportunity or foot in the door. But at the same time, you still have to build that relationship and earn trust. But, having a referral, I think, again, comes back to delivering A-plus customer service. And if you can do that and someone's willing to put their name behind it and say, yeah, Signature Closers does an outstanding job for us, you should try them, obviously that's the best opportunity for us. And, outside of that, I would say, partnerships are big for us. So I mentioned earlier Adaptive and Resware. They're, far and away, one of our best partnerships we've ever had. Thrilled to work with those guys, and we're actually participating in their conference here in about 2 weeks in Denver, so we're excited about that. We partner with Pavazo, and they're one of the leading e-closing technology providers, so opportunities that come from that relationship are obviously very valuable to us, and also unique, I think, in this environment. So, any type of partnership obviously drives, good opportunity for us. Referrals, would definitely be the best from existing clients, but
Right.
Those would probably be, the two ideal ways that we would go.
Right. Both referrals and the partnerships, in a way, they're giving you warm introductions. How about for a cold outreach? What have you found has worked best?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I used to make probably a lot more cold calls in the previous job. Like I mentioned, kind of a bigger market maybe and more of an opportunity where, there's just so many companies and you could just pick up the phone and dial about anybody and they'd be a prospect. With Signature, we do make cold calls, and I think, the opportunity there, I try to make it a little bit warmer, a warmer version of a cold call. And what I mean by that is I don't just pick up the phone and try to pitch my value proposition down somebody's throat. I'm obviously a business owner as well, and so I'm on the receiving end of some of those calls, and I've tried to take some of that information and those experiences and understand, what approach did I like, what was I responsive to, what was I not responsive to. And I think one of the big keys is maybe better understanding the target audience. So I try to research the company a little bit. I may reach out to one of our partners and say, hey, are you doing business with these guys? What do you know about them? What are their pain points? What are things that, they may be looking for that we can solve for? And, I try to approach it from that perspective. So I try to make it a warmer cold call by understanding their business before I just pick up the phone.
Right. And I suppose that works well because there aren't a huge number of high-volume clients that you wish to do business with or that you want to do business with, and you have a good idea who they are to begin with.
It does. And, I can say if you're somebody that's in a business that maybe you have a bigger volume or target market to work from, my experience there told me that, part of it's a numbers game, and I think people will tell you that. But there's an understanding as well, I think, that, there's a really good book I read, and I don't remember the author, but it's called Go for No. And my old boss, his name's Tom, it's a great sales book. So my previous employer, my boss's name was Tom Wagner. He's still, a mentor, a very good friend of mine. and probably the best salesman I've ever been across. And so working with him, he passed us all this book, and what I took away from it and what I really kind of valued is that the whole premise of the book was that we needed to understand that we're going to get a lot of no's. If you're in sales, you really want a yes or a no. You don't want a maybe. Oftentimes we get maybes, and that's challenging because it involves your time, you're following up. It's a lot of effort, and oftentimes those maybes, don't come to fruition.
Right.
So the book, I think, said something about the fact that maybe it was 9 no's before you get to your yes. You needed to figure out how many no's, how many calls you had to make before you got to that yes, somebody that would give you time or an appointment. And so I would have calls in my previous job where I may call and it may be the 6th person I talked to that gave me a no. And I might say something like, I read this really good book called Go for No, and it told me that I need to get 9 no's before I'm going to get to my 10th person who's going to say, yes, I'll meet with you. You're the 6th person that's told me no. Do you know 3 more people that can tell me no
right.
so I can get to somebody that wants to meet with me? And I've actually had people say, I will meet with you, as a result of that. And I think it's being personable. You have to understand that even though you're in sales, you obviously, hopefully you believe if you're in sales that you can deliver value to your customer through whatever you're offering, product, service, whatever. But it's also, I think, being relatable to that person. And, you're there to solve a problem for them. And if you can't figure out what that problem is, they're not going to have an interest in meeting with you. So you need to be personable. You need to ask a lot of questions. And so that was typically my approach, personable, ask a lot of questions, if possible, respectful of someone's time, and persistence. I mean, there were times that some of our biggest clients, whether it's this job currently with Signature or the previous company I was with, where, I would call people over the course of 3, 4, 5 years. We're onboarding a client right now, Signature Closers, that the sales cycle, so to speak, has been 4 years. And that's just persistence. And I think that's a huge key when it comes to sales. You can't give up. You have to make those calls and those follow-ups, in an appropriate time frame.
Right. Going back to the second driver, you said before, half your business, 50-50, was some new clients. The other 50% is just returning business. How are you keeping your clients happy and continuing to do business with you? And also, to follow up on that, in both cases, how are you getting your clients to do more business with you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, in order to keep them happy in our line of work, I think really it involves a consistent process. People want consistency, and we take the approach that, our business, we're managing exceptions, not the normal closing that everything goes smoothly the 99% of the time when things will go fine. We're actually managing that 1% where something either is going wrong, is about to go wrong, and we need to solve for that. And, we're not always going to catch it necessarily prior to the actual closing event. It may be after the closing. It may have been, our notary allowed the signer to miss this one signature and we need to get it fixed. But having a consistent process for that, very responsive follow-up. I mean, one of our core values as a company is to offer service with a certain level of responsiveness. So we want to be responsive. We want to be service-oriented. We want to be accountable. And I think if you do all those things and you're genuine when you do it, your customers recognize that. And so they appreciate that while we're not perfect, and the notaries that we work with certainly are not perfect either, we're willing to stand accountable and get things corrected. So I think that's a key driver in terms of consistency, managing those exceptions, according to that process, and making sure that people feel comfortable with the people they're doing business with. And as it relates to just kind of how we keep those companies or how we keep our sales process. What was the second question? Was it about sales process? I'm sorry.
No problem. Maybe I should ask them one at a time. The second question is that for your clients, both your new and returning, how do you encourage them to buy as much as buy as much of your services as possible? Of course, your services are helping them, but how do you get them to buy A, B, and C, and D?
Yeah, absolutely. So interestingly enough, with our business, the service that we offer at this point is pretty singular in the sense that, we offer the notary or attorney signings. We're getting into some new opportunities where we're offering our technology and getting into the e-closing space. And so I anticipate that, a lot of that will be awareness and making our clients aware of what we're offering. But as far as actually growing the service or services that we do offer today, a big part of that is just continuing to stay in contact, whether it's a monthly, a quarterly. We have scorecard meetings with companies where we're looking at performance. we're also asking questions. I mean, it's kind of falls back to the same sales cycle or sales process, understanding their business, asking questions, opening opportunities where they may not have thought of you as like, oh, you can actually do that. I didn't think, you guys offered that service. And so it's helping them understand everything that we do offer, whether it's, different types of closings that we might be able to perform, or, now we have an opportunity where we're partnering on attorney-type retainer signings, and that's a unique form of business for us. And so it's sort of asking the right questions and getting in front of the right decision makers, but it's just, following up and making sure that you're working with your clients on a regular basis, I think, to understand their needs is really the biggest driver.
Right. Okay. Switching gears a little bit. Before, when I introduced your company, I mentioned how you grew your sales 80% from $3.8 million in 2014 to $6.3 million in 2017, right? That's a 80% increase over 3 years. And this year it's looking like a flat year, right? About the same in 2018 as 2017, around $6 million. What's going on behind that? What's happening there?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And I had mentioned earlier, I think that interest rates really drove a big portion of that refinance business, that boom that we saw with historically low interest rates. And, in this market, interest rates are still, by historical standards, pretty low. I want to say maybe 4.5%, 5%, depending on, the type of loan and what you're looking for. But, we were talking about interest rates under 4%. And so what you're starting to see, a lot of the projections that we follow, there's the Mortgage Bankers Association, there's Freddie Mac, there's forecasts in our industry that are projecting 20, 25, 30% reduction, whether that's total volume of loans or maybe specifically refinances. And so what we're finding is, historically companies in our space, in our position, which, we're a very niche business, but whether it's us or our competitors, we would trend towards that reduction. We would see maybe a 25, 30% reduction in our revenue based on, those factors that, are somewhat outside of our control, obviously, with the economy. However, what I think we've been able to do, and that's kind of where we talked about adding new clients and new opportunities being very important for our business, to be able to be somewhat stable or somewhat close to our revenue from last year, to me, is actually a big win for our organization. Yeah, not a lot of people would say, wow, you went down a little bit in revenue, or, maybe you stayed the same. How was that a good year? But for us, and based on historical standards and looking at the rest of our industry, you see, I think just recently, Wells Fargo laid off 600-something people from their mortgage department. And as a company, we are not, thankfully, right now going through any of those transitions or looking to downsize or anything like that, because we've been able to grow our revenue to offset that loss. So even though it's stable in a weird way, it's sort of a positive for us, I guess, in this business that we're in.
Right. So are you expecting that you're going to see some revenue contraction in line with what the Freddie Mac and the other industry associations are forecasting?
Well, I'm not, because I think I kind of just, I mentioned this or foreshadowed a little bit earlier, but we are expanding our offerings in the sense that we have a platform called Sync, which is short for Select Your Notary Closer, Secure Your Notary Closer. And basically, it is a platform or an opportunity where there are companies that are title companies that could be prospective clients for us across the country, that rather than using what we're referred to, which is like a signing service or a notary signing service, they elect to manage their transactions, what we call in-house. So for lack of a better term, they don't need us. They manage their own closings. But we're offering them a technology that allows them to be more efficient, is the only solution in the industry that is integrated completely with Adeptive's Resware. So if you're a company that's using Resware today and you're managing your own closings, you may have another platform you're using to help manage, or you may have your own platform you've built. Our solution will allow you to stay within Resware, which is your core technology, which all of your people are trained on. It's a very effective, a very efficient technology, and so you want your people to stay in it. We're giving you the opportunity to do that. So we're expecting and seeing growth in that particular space, so to speak. We have a few companies right now that are piloting the platform that we anticipate in the next 3 to 6 months will be onboarding, that really could significantly grow our revenue. And the other thing that we're really doing, I think, that makes us and puts us in a unique position, is we're really focused on e-closings. And so we're partnered with Pavazo. We have a partnership with Notarize, which is another big player in the e-closing space in our industry. And so simple file is another. We have relationships where we're positioning ourselves to be a valuable partner to these companies to provide e-closings as they come online in different states. So I think that'll also grow revenue and grow opportunity. So I'm maybe cautiously optimistic that we'll continue to grow our revenue and potentially substantially grow it from where we are today, with the right partnerships and the right clients coming on board.
Right. Great. So how big do you foresee your sync platform and your e-closing platform being as a part of your business, say 5 years from now? What percentage of revenue do you see those two platforms becoming?
That's a really good question as well. You have a lot of good questions today, Malcolm. I appreciate it. I would say, from a revenue perspective, where I think we're going to be. So I'll back into this number. My goal as a company, I really would like to see us get over 10 million in revenue over the next 5 years, certainly, and I believe we'll be there. And I would say, if I had to guess as far as the revenue split, again, I'm going to kind of come back to maybe the 60-40, 50-50 in the sense that, if we can stabilize and maybe continue to grow Signature Closers' core business revenue, keep it in line with that, $5, $6, $7 million, I think it's very realistic that we could see the sync platform alone contribute, 3 million, 5 million, 7 million in revenue. And then obviously the e-closing piece will add on to that. So,
right.
Again, our target, I think, I'd love to see us in the $10 to $15 million revenue range. Anything beyond that, I think, would be astronomical. But I think, it is great, and I certainly think it's within reach. But, that's, I think, our goal. Between 10 to 15 million in revenue is where we hope to be, and probably 60-40, 50-50 split.
Right. Okay. We talked earlier about the impact of rising interest rates on your business and on your industry as a whole. What other things are disruptive in your industry? What other things are disrupting your industry?
Absolutely. Well, there's a lot of disruption going on. There's probably, if you Google or go online, there's articles every day about, the antiquated real estate market. Title insurance is antiquated and it's ripe for disruption. And so there's so many companies out there that are disrupting the industry in their own way. For us in particular, I think potential disruptions and, disruption for us presents opportunity. I don't consider it necessarily a challenge. We sort of see it as opportunity, but, e-closings in general are definitely a disruption. Typically your traditional signing, if you were buying a home or refinancing a house, you may have a notary signing agent that would come to your home, come to an office, meet with you with a stack of 150 pages, sign everything by hand. You go through the documents. And that's the closing process, and that's the way it's been for a number of years. So with e-closings, I think we're headed into a different space, obviously, where there's sort of a few different ways that it's changing. One would be obviously the electronic signing itself. Once the documents, certain states come online and say, yes, we'll accept, electronic signatures have been around for a long time, but it's really the electronic notarization. So can the notary notarize these documents electronically? Once that's allowed, and once, there's a lot of tech platforms that can do that. So once it's really allowed in that state, that's a transition. So potentially the entire transaction could go, all online. So
right.
It's definitely headed that direction. That's changing things.
Okay.
The second piece is many states are allowing remote notarization, and that is, probably the bigger disruptor. And so there's models out there and companies out there that their goal would be to staff, sort of an office environment. They have 100 people that are notary signing agents that they've trained that are sitting at computers. And for instance, this isn't quite legal yet in Ohio. There's a bill that's kind of pushing its way through eventually to make this legal soon. But I could be sitting at my desk in Columbus, Ohio, and you can be in Los Angeles, California, or wherever, and it's as if you were in front of me if we do an audio, video, basically a FaceTime closing. So all the documents are online. There's a number of stipulations around that, and every state's a little bit different. They're trying to consolidate standards, but you have to record it. You have to have it on file for 7 years. So there's a bunch of things around it. But ultimately, you could staff an office of 100 people in Ohio or Texas, or right now Virginia, I think, is the first state to come online, and you can close loans anywhere. And so that would change, obviously. Our market today is we have notaries around the entire country that can show up to someone's home or office, and in that model, you would have an office environment. So that's probably for our business itself the biggest disruptor. But there are companies out there like the Pavazo partnership I mentioned. They have their own remote notary technology where we would be providing those services with our database or our notaries across the country. Rather than an office environment, we would coordinate with those notaries to have, whether it's a home office or maybe they're renting space at an office or a Regis professional environment, to be able to close loans electronically, remotely as well.
Right. I have one other question for you that I should have asked earlier in our conversation. Let me ask you here.
Sure.
We talked a bit about your customer acquisition, but we didn't talk too much about the delivery of your product and service, namely the notaries, the attorneys, and now also your e-closing and your sync product lines. What do you find to be the biggest problems right now in regards to acquiring new customers and in regards to providing your service?
Well, one of the biggest variables for us is the fact that all of the notary signing agents across the country are 1099 independent contractors. So we have a core team at Signature Closers that are W-2 employees, and they're generally, I guess, tasked with managing the business side. Okay. So they're helping schedule, they're dealing with, did the notary get their documents? Did it close successfully? Are there faxes missing? Did something get messed up at closing that we need to correct, for lack of a better term? So we have a core team that manages that. The notaries themselves are all independent contractors. They're 1099, miscellaneous contractors. And so there's some element of control, but understanding that, they're their own boss, basically. So we can provide guidelines and we provide guidance based on whether it's a lender or a title company that is providing the assignment. We'll pull in those instructions. We'll kind of reiterate those. But, we can't be at the closing. And so I think that presents its own challenge in the sense that, there's a little bit of a lack of control on our end. We do as much as we possibly can, but it's sort of out of our hands once it gets to closing, and we have to trust that, our vetting process and our verification of the notary and everything that they stand for, we did a good job. Hopefully we did a good job up front. And thankfully, I think our client retention speaks to that. We are more selective than other companies in terms of the people that we send out to represent, our company or our clients. But, that is definitely a challenge. And from a sales perspective, I think one of the challenges really, and this can probably be said across any industry, is I think people are resistant to change. And so having that momentum to say, your current vendor, not necessarily us knowing that current vendor or knowing how things are going, getting someone to feel comfortable enough with us to say, yeah, let's try you out. And that's always a challenge, I think, especially if someone, whether that current experience is great, average, unless it's terrible, they're probably going to be a little bit resistant to change. And so, building that inertia for them to say, yeah, let's give this a shot, let's pilot you guys, is probably the biggest challenge. I mean, typically once we get someone to say, we'll give you a shot, they end up being a client for 5 years. And, so that's the challenge, I think, is getting them past that tipping point where they say, either things are bad enough that I'm ready to make a change, or, you know what, I think things could be good enough with you guys and there's enough opportunity and enhancements with what you guys are offering that we'll make that change. So we'll at least give you the opportunity.
Right. And the reason why they make the change is because you just make it easier for them to take care of these things. It's just one less headache or a dozen less headaches for them to deal with. Is that the selling proposition?
It is. I mean, so there's kind of two sales. One would be the company that's doing it in-house typically is a better prospect for our sync platform because they probably have reasons to do it in-house. So whether that's cost savings for them, a little bit more control of the process, I'm not sure exactly of all the reasons, depends on the company, but, they would be a better fit for sync. But I think the scenario where we have a competitor maybe that's entrenched doing what we do at a company, the sales proposition there, it really can vary. I mean, cost, I think, is generally pretty consistent across most companies. So it's usually not a whole lot driven by cost, I would say, but it's more by some of the efficiencies and some of the value adds we can offer in terms of whether it's an integration. So companies that aren't integrated, they may say, okay, well, if you want to enter orders, you need to go to our website, upload your order, upload your documents, and if we can offer some integration there where it just flows from their current operating system, there's a value add. If we can build out certain processes to allow a company to feel like their process or their closing is being better managed, we can do that as well. So it's I think just a value add that we bring versus their existing company, and that's done through technology, that's done through process, that's done through people, and really it's through understanding their needs. We ask those questions like, hey, in this state, in Connecticut, for instance, we have a client where there's a legal representation form that has to go in every package. and their existing vendor, they were like, yeah, it's getting missed a bunch. And technically, it was actually a client responsibility. Like their team was supposed to put it in the package. It's not really their vendor's fault. But we were able to come in and say, listen, we'll scan your package once you send it over to us. And if we identify that those documents aren't in there, then we'll send you guys a notification before the closing so you can send us those documents. Because they were having to pay, a $60 or $70 fee every time it got missed to send someone else out to get it signed. And so, almost overnight, we were able to save them, I don't know, $500, $1,000 a month based on that one document where we did, just went above and beyond to make sure that it was in the package. So it's kind of offering value adds like that to separate us from maybe our competitors.
Okay, fantastic. One last question for you, Mark. For the listeners of this interview who are interested in doing business with Signature Closers, what's the best way for them to contact your team?
Absolutely. I would tell them to reach out to me personally. I am very involved in our sales process and with a lot of our clients, and they can reach me via email. It's Mark, M-A-R-K, .Fleming, F-L-E-M-I-N-G, at signatureclosers.com. So mark.fleming at signatureclosers.com. And if you struggle spelling my name, you can also reach out to scheduling at signatureclosers.com. That's our general email box where our team is managing closings on a daily basis, and they'll certainly get you to the right spot.
All right, fantastic. Thanks so much, Mark, for joining us today and sharing how you grew your company so fast. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you for your time, Malcolm. Appreciate it as well.
We've been speaking with Mark Fleming Jr., the founder and president of Signature Closers, about his company's rapid growth. For interviews with other fast-growing companies, or to learn how we can increase your firm's high-ticket sales through automation, visit Eversprint.com.